Daith da, Win Hoskin. Welcome to podcast number 49. So when I normally record perhaps the intros or the ending bits of the podcast, I normally leave it to end of the week, maybe Wednesday sometimes, but Thursday. If I've been under pressure, it is Friday. But this is a first for me today. I'm actually recording this on the Sunday afternoon because I'm fairly quiet today. But then, whereas last week we were fairly quiet, this week coming, we're flat out. And it's one of those weeks where I will go in. Our first funeral tomorrow is 8:30 in the morning, and we're going right through the last funeral at 4:30 in church here in Glacale. And so it's a case of I'll go in the morning, and then I'm just here, there, and everywhere. Tuesday's just as busy. Wednesday not quite so busy, and Thursday's going a little bit quieter. But I thought, well, I was quiet today. At least if I record this bit, and then 'tis out of the way, and I can relax a little bit. So I hope you're all well. Today, again, we've got the second part of Win's podcast, our interview. So we'll go into that at the minute. But before I do, I just wanted to say about our charitable fund and a donation which we gave last week. So as a lot of you know, 10 years ago now, marked the 30 years that I'd been in the funeral profession, and I wanted to mark that somehow. So I started a charitable fund where we give donations for local good causes, etc. And we can either do it quiet and discreetly, or if the people think it would help raise awareness and perhaps bring in a little bit more sponsorship, we can then, put a little bit on here and on our Facebook page and everything. So this week just gone, we popped up to the Cornwall Gymnastics Centre here in Wadebridge. And it's a lovely little organisation. It's a not-for-profit project, and it just relies solely on donations and membership fees. So they were looking for a donation. I think they wanted to buy a new vault and crash mats and things like that. So we agreed to it. So we went up last week, and we had a photo done, and I've put a little bit. Well, I'm putting a little bit on our website today, but then I will put, by the time you hear this, a photo on our Works RJ Bray Facebook page with also a little bit about it. But I think, I say it's mainly children. I think it's geared, for children. But it does actually aim to provide gymnastics for all abilities and all age groups. And I know that when we were up there, Beth was talking about perhaps going up because she used to do a lot of gymnastics when she was younger. So, we wish them well for the future. And say, if you want to look at a bit more about it, you can go on their website, Cornwall Gymnastics Centre, or there is a little bit there on our Facebook page. So now we'll have the second part of me interview with Win Hoskin. And whereas last week we talked about our early days at Hingham, but also when she was working in the post office there and living in Polzeath, and then her late husband Graham with his coach driving days and that. This week is pretty much fixed all around Hingham and growing up, and also a lot about the animals that they were surrounded with. But I will, just for any of you that are a little bit faint-hearted, a big chunk of this podcast is actually about the day they killed the pig. And I thought I'd warn you because she does go into quite a bit of detail, really. But I wanted to keep it in because it just shows how much life have changed, over, what shall I say, 80 years ago. I mean, dear Win's 94, I think now. So this was back when she was young. And now life have changed so much. So I'll hand over to Win now, and we'll have a bit more of our interview, and then I'll just round things off again directly with me Cornish dialect and me word for the week. So here goes. Going back a bit to Hingham, I know you were saying about, was it the gangers?
The gangers, they were called. It was 2 or 3 men came all the line. They walked the line every day from Wadebridge.
Yeah.
And came up the line, and they had like a stick, and they hit the line, testing I don't know whether there was a sound,
Yeah.
I think, that proved the lines were true.
Yeah.
They weren't out of line, if you
Yeah,
see what I
yeah.
mean, when the trains... Anyway, we weren't supposed to go on the lines.
No.
There was a wire fence, but we could cock your leg and get in through. And when they'd gone by and gone up the line, we used to go in and pick wild strawberries. And they grew. One year we had a marvellous crop. And we picked a milk pan full of strawberries and took them home, and Grandma made wild strawberry jam. And it was delicious. It really, a lot better flavour than your cultivated strawberries.
Exactly.
They really were lovely.
Yeah.
But you had to be careful because there were adders.
All right.
And they used to love it on the lines in the sun, where they went down to the cuttings, and they'd be lying on the sun and in the grass. And we always carried a stick to tap the grass before we walked through, in case you disturb them. They'd hiss, but they'd go away. They didn't hang about to be knocked over the edge.
No.
And I know I hated adders, and my father was afraid of adders. In fact, he carried the gun.
Oh.
And quite often he'd shoot them if they were near the animals, or, if they were dangerous. And one year we had a young sow, and she was in the farmyard, eating, we call them pennies, those flat, round fungus leaves that grow, those things that grow in the hedges. Yeah. They're like about thick like that, but they're like a fungus. And the pigs used to love eating them out of the hedge. And she was due to farrow any day. We waiting for her to have veers. And she dropped dead. And we couldn't believe it. She'd been eating these fungus leaves, and an adder was in the hedge, and he bit her tongue, and it swelled so much that it choked her, and she couldn't breathe, and she died. And the adder was by her mouth, in the head. Awful things they are. I don't know why we got them, because what good are they? Some people love them, but, I don't like them. Further I am away from them, I'm happier. So it's another year then before the sow can be mated and have another brood of ears and, come on again, hatching another lot. So, yes. Oh, another day out, Father said to me, take Smokey, that was the pony, down to Slade's Bridge, to Stan Brown to be shod.
Right.
He was the blacksmith, and a wonderful blacksmith he was. And he was called Stanley. And we nicknamed him Tantrum Boobus. And don't ask me why, but that was his nickname. And Father said, and on the way home, come down through Pennyquindle, that's one of the fields up on the way home from Slade's Bridge, and give her a good gallop, good exercise, and come up through the moor. Right. So off I go down with the pony. And his greeting was, where's the bloody chocolate? He always had to have a bar of chocolate. I haven't got any. We'll go over Stanley Wills's and get a bar of chocolate. Stanley Wills had a shop in Slade's Bridge, little grocers.
Is that something to do with Frank Wilson?
No.
Oh, different?
No, different altogether.
All right.
So I get a bit of chocolate for him. I can't work if I haven't got chocolate. Anyway, all was finished and he had his chocolate, and I rode the pony home and got back up to Trevilder, down through one field, and opened the gate to get in Pennyquindle. That was the name of the field. Everything was named in those days. And I opened the gate to go through, and there was 2 or 3 men. I think they were shooting rabbits. Right. They had guns. They used to go out shooting rabbits. And just as I got through to the gate, going through, one of them fired a gun. Of course, the pony jumped. I lost my stirrup.
Oh, no.
and through the gate and hung on for dear life, but I couldn't hold the pony back. She bolted, and I went over the top.
Oh.
And my landing was lovely in a load of fresh cow's dung.
Oh, no.
And the pony had gone. And the bridle was still on her, which had broken, obviously, because they galloped through it, you know. So off home I had to walk. Where's the pony? Gone down the valley. Where's the bridle? Still with the pony. Off goes father down to get the pony. And she was nearly down to Lawney, right down the end of the valley. Anyway, he got the pony and brought her back. And he galloped her around. She pulled and pulled. She wanted to cross the river and go in through Checky Park, the other little meadow, the other side, to go in the yard.
Yeah, I see.
So, of course, he was stronger than me, and he'd got 2 feet in the stirrups, too. I'd lost one of mine, and he brought her home, but not the wonderful day. And I spent the rest of the day getting cleaned and cleaning my clothes and God knows what. When we first heard of corn on the cob, we thought it was funny people, because we fed our chicken on maize and they were feeding it themselves, you know, living on crushed maize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you used to give the chicken.
We fed the chicken with it. We had a nice sized pond at Hingham. In the winter, our cousins and friends used to come down from Roxy, etc., to skate across. When it was frozen, it was solid, absolutely solid, and it was big. Well, it reached from here over to the fence, sort of, you know, a long pond. It was the length of the road from the house to the first bridge.
I get it.
The front of Hingham.
Yeah.
And they could stand up really well. They skated. And, of course, they all wore hobnail boots. And they'd make a running start from the corner of the house, down the bit of road and on the pond. And they'd go across. Wonderful, stand up.
Yeah.
And it was fast, because with hobnail, I mean, they couldn't go wrong, you know?
Yeah.
But if they were going too fast, they couldn't stop when they got the other side. And they'd go right off the pond and right across the road and in the river. Well, we thought it was hilarious. This was our entertainment. We see how many of them went in the river that day, you know? Our entertainment was free. We didn't have to pay any entrance to see it. It was all free, you know?
God.
Yeah, that was another story. We couldn't skate at all, hardly. I couldn't balance at all. I had many falls and bruises and whatever, but they were quite good at it. They showed off. Boys did. When we got modern at Hingham, we had a wireless, and it was run by 2 batteries. And a dry battery, which was about 8 inches by 6, and about 2 inches deep.
Right.
And an accumulator, which was glass, and it was about 7 inches high and about 5 inches square.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
And there was a carrying handle. It had a metal frame, a carrying handle. And I had to carry that to Wadebridge on the Platte to Weeks's garage.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You know Weeks's garage?
Yeah.
Opposite the town hall.
Yeah.
And next to a greengrocer's, not the Vine. It was run then, and I think by 2 sisters, and there were Grace and Ida Julian, to get the battery charged.
Yeah.
I don't know what they did in the battery. It was the garage.
Yeah.
But, and I paid 6pence. And I think it would last 2 weeks.
All right.
And then you had to take it in and have it charged. The dry battery lasted a long, long time. But the accumulator was about 2 weeks. And the gates across the level crossing, they were always shut for the train to go up and down to Padstow. Across the road. And we used to go up the steps by the side of the railway, across the top and down the bottom. And down the bottom was that big, I think it was a green iron building. It was called the Iron Duke.
Iron Duke, yeah.
It was a men's toilet, wasn't it?
I remember that one.
Opposite Commercial.
Yeah, that's right.
There you are. That's something else. coming back from Sladesbridge one day, I came back through to Woodgate, where the end of the wood came into on the Miller's Road, and through to Checky Park. That was the name of the field. All the fields and meadows had names. Higher field, left hand and right hand, which side of the road they were. The orchard, 40 acres.
Right.
40 acres was a tiny little slope full of ferns and primroses. But it was called 40 acres. I don't know why. The hill, Sleep's Hill,
right,
that some called Sleeper's Hill, because the gypsies used to come up through Hingham and they slept up in the corner of that field. And that was adjoining Pennyquindle, where you came down through. You used to sleep in the top field, join the yard. Higher moor and lower moor, whichever side of the road they were, you know. Yeah. It's funny how they gave them names.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Anyway, this particular day, I'm coming back from Sladesbridge. And as I came through the top of Checky Park, there was a sow down by the mill stream, lying in the rushes.
Right.
And I thought, I wonder what she's doing there. Because the mill was working, the leat was running, and it used to spread out. When it got to the top of the bank, it would spread out into the bottom of the meadow.
I see.
In the rushes.
Yeah.
And she was down to where it had sort of started spreading, I thought. And you didn't dare interrupt when they were... No. Anyway, I went down to have a look, and she'd had 2 veers.
Oh.
And they were just about in the water. And I thought, oh God, you know, and they can get nasty if you when they breeding. We all wore pinnies in those days, and our pinnies were thick, like crash material, sack material, thick material. Anyway, I saw these 2 little piggies. Well, they'd only just been hatched out. Picked them up and put them in my pinny, and took them over to the garden hedge, which was just up from the water. And the sun was shining. I thought, well, it's warm. And then I went back, and she'd had 3 more.
Oh, no.
So I picked them up. Oh. But one of them I rubbed on her nose and said, come on, get up from there. You can drown these veers lying here like this, you know. And tapped her bottom of that, and she did stagger up on her feet. Oh. It was only 2 or 3 steps to the garden hedge, but it was out of the water. Yeah. And she got over there and dropped one on the way. I picked that one up as well, took it over. And she went over and lied down, exhausted, poor thing, you know. And she had 2 more, I think. She had 9 veers. And she lay down in the sun, and she was more than relieved to sort of get there. And all was well. They nestled in, soon found their breakfast, and she had 9 veers, and they all lived and they were all reared.
Fantastic.
Now, they'd have gone in 5 minutes and we'd have lost the lot. Yeah. Breeding was so natural. Everything was free range. Everything was out of doors, and it was all so natural, if you know what I mean. We had a cow's house, a stable, pig's house, barn, duck's house, goose house, chicken coops and chicken runs, but they all laid out and they all stole their nests. You never knew where you was going to pick up eggs from. They seldom used the nest boxes in the houses, you know. And they'd go in the stupidest places, in the mill porch, under all the wheels, back in the corner. They'd make a nest and lay. Yeah. And I was the smallest and had to crawl back in to pick up the eggs each day. And the geese laid about 16 eggs a year. They only laid once a year.
Oh, I see.
And they could sit on 11. They couldn't cover any more to keep them warm. And they sat for a month before they hatched out. Yeah. And as soon as those little goslings came out, once they dried off, they'd go straight down to the river and swim.
Would they really?
Absolutely minutes.
Yeah.
You couldn't believe it. And if they had any eggs left over, because you didn't waste them, because goose eggs were this size.
Yeah.
Bit bigger than duck's eggs, and of course a bit bigger than chicken eggs. And if there was any left over, we'd put 2 goose eggs, maybe 3, under a clucky hen.
Yeah.
And she would sit on them and hatch them out. And she would hatch out those goose eggs. And once those goslings had dried, she'd take them down to the river at the bottom of the field. And we had an old Indian game, she was. She had biggish wings. And she hatched 3 little goslings and reared them.
Get away.
Yeah. They'd go down to the river every day with the goslings in the river and them on the bank. Yeah. And they'd come up and feed, and then they'd go down in the water again. It was wonderful, really.
Yeah.
How did the hens know that they hatched their eggs in 3 weeks? But with a goose egg, they had to sit for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
If you was brave enough, when they were ready to hatch, and you went to the nests, I always found out where the net, you'd see them sitting and they, you know. And if you could get your hand in underneath and get an egg and put it up to your ear, you could hear it picking to come out. Now, did the hens wait until they heard the picking for the goose eggs to come out? How did they know there was another week to go before they could get off? Because they only come off once a day and fed, and they were back on the eggs again. Yeah. And if they stayed off, it died, of course. There was nothing left, you know. All rather wonderful, I felt. Everything looked after itself and did so much. The coal range in the kitchen was the only means of hot water or cooking. And it was black-leaded every week. Black lead put on, like a powder with a brush, and then polished and shone. And the brass knobs and the top of the fender was always brassoed. And the top of the oven, there was a slit, and you had a little scraper. You scraped out the soot out of the fire as well, and under the chimney if there was any. And every so often you put the brush up the chimney and hope it went out, you know. Otherwise, nothing would work.
No.
If you left the soot there, nothing would work. You had to light the fire to boil the kettle. You didn't have a cup of tea unless you boiled the kettle, you know. And the oven, as I say, it was all done and looked after. It was hard work. I don't know how they coped. My gran had 8 children. Right, pig killing day. The fattened pig was brought out beside the stock. It's about 6 foot long, with handles both ends, and it stands legs about 2 foot high, wood.
Right.
And that's on the ground. And the pig was brought out beside it, and you had to go to the food office to get a permit. We could kill 2 pigs a year during the war. You said to me, somebody else had said that.
John and Alex said that last week. Yeah, that's right.
And I had to go to the food office to get the licence.
Where was that to?
Now, you pass the cinema in Weybridge and go up towards Burlawn.
Yeah.
And on the left, there's a house called, can't think what it's called now, but the right-hand side of the road, there was a shoe shop.
All right.
And that was run by somebody called Salt, Mr. Salt. And I think they had 2 children. They went to school. I remember them going to school. Anyway, you went in Armadale.
Ah, yes.
Armadale. You went in Armadale. And to the right of that was the food office.
Oh, I see.
In those days. It's changed now at this end. And get the licence. And Mr. Jack Bastard of St. Mabon was the slaughter man.
Right.
So you had to contact him and say, we got a pig. But you either had to walk to him, St. Mabon from Hingham, just no telephone.
No.
Or write a letter.
Oh, right.
You had no connection with him.
No.
And he would make a date, you know, and come, and the fire would be lit in the copper. The copper was filled with buckets of water and brought to boiling. And the pig had a rope on one leg and was led out by the side of the stock.
Yeah.
And the gun was fired, this pig was shot. And it was heaved then onto the stock. And by this time, the water in the copper was boiling. And they had a scraper each,
right.
the slaughterman and Dad, of course, scrape. And they used to put the hot water on and scrape all the hair off the pig.
All right.
That's how they got into the flesh.
Yeah.
And when they'd finished scraping it, the whole thing took a long time. There wasn't a hair to be seen, and it was all pink flesh.
Right.
The skin was all pink. And he was also a butcher, very clever butcher. They put a rope on the two legs and put a wood between it to keep the legs apart.
Right.
And hung that up to the beam in the mill porch.
Right.
So the pig is hanging down by the legs. And then they cut it from the neck down to the tail to a collection of baths, buckets, bowls to catch all the innards.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was separated. The liver and lights and everything was in separate divisions. Liver and onions for tea on the day the pig was killed. You couldn't have fresher liver than that.
No.
You go butchers today, you don't know how long it's been on the shelf.
No.
And then, well, it was a full day's work. It was hard work, and there were several of us doing, and each doing our share. And the biggest pig we killed was 37 score. My gran cut up fat and ran it down in a big boiler on the kitchen stove, on the thing. And it made milk pans and buckets full of lard, which lasted 6 months for cooking, you know. And the shoulders and the hams were put in a salting keeve.
Right.
Do you know what a salting keeve is?
I've heard of these keeves.
Well, keeves were sometimes wood, like a coffin, if you know what I mean, that size. Or I think a barrel, some used a wooden barrel to put them in. But in the bones, when you got the shoulders and the legs and whatever, there's the big knuckle bones and that.
Yeah.
You put saltpeter in.
Right.
And that was a curing agent. Filled them with saltpeter and rubbed salt in. They were salted in.
Yeah.
And put in the salting keeve. We had a salting keeve in the dairy, and it was concrete. It was built like a coffin.
Yeah.
With a lid put on it.
Yeah.
And all that was going to be salted down, all the meat, because it kept for weeks and weeks and weeks when it was like that. There was no fridge, no freezer, no electric, no nothing, you know. And that all had to be put away, and all this fat cut up and run down to make the lard. We lived high in those days. It was wonderful during the war, because we'd kill a pig and you'd kill a cow or something, and you'd have part of our pig, and we'd swap and change and have a different cut of meat, if you know what I mean, you know?
Yeah.
Which was one, we were lucky. We had eggs, milk, cream, butter, you know, and of course always plenty of veg. We always grew, never bought veg. Everything was grown in the garden, you know, various joints. It all took a few weeks. I'm not sure how long. But I do remember Stanley Wills from Sladesbridge had his van, and he used to come to Hingham with the van with groceries, and Grandma used to go out and pick off the shelves what she wanted, and then he'd total it up. He would take so many dozen eggs. So he bought the eggs and we bought the groceries, and then whichever had to pay money sort of, you know. Yeah. And he used to bring up a block of salt, and it weighed 28 pounds to salt in a pig or whatever you were going to salt in. It was hard going, hard going. When it came out of the keeve, when the hams and that came out of the keeve, it was cleaned off and, you know, salt taken out. And it was put in white sacks.
Right.
And they were J. Arthur Rank flour bags.
Oh, right.
And they were white sort of linen. And you put the meat in there and tied it and hung it up in the kitchen or in the dairy.
Yeah.
And you could take it and cut out when you wanted. You obviously didn't cook a whole ham. You know, you cut out what you wanted, kept the flies off it, you see. Yeah. It was in, and these bags were what they used for flour. And they all went through the boiler and got washed, and they were saved, and then you tied the top, and that was the saving of the food, really.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't believe what we did in those days, really. All the oddments of meat, and there was all sorts of oddments when you'd cut, and the head and all the offcuts were all put through the mincer, mixed with rice and different things, to make hog's pudding. All right. And brawn. You know brawn?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. Brawn is lovely. Nothing was wasted. Everything was cooked. The tripe was put in a bath and taken over to the waterfall. Right. We stood on the waterfall with our tripe stick, and you held the tripe because the water's gushing all the time. Yeah. Stood on the edge. Let it wash through, so the tripe was all emptied out that way.
Right, I see.
The waste, I'm putting it politely.
Yeah.
And then you had your tripe stick and caught one end and pulled the tripe back across the stick and turned it inside out and washed the inside of it out as well. Yeah. And it was put in a pan, when it was clean, put in a pan of clean water, salted water, and it was changed every day, twice a day, to clean water and salt. And after about 5 days, that's what you made your hog's pudding out of. Oh. Do you know what you're eating when you have hog's pudding? Yes. And the small tripe, which I never really liked, the small tripe, but that was done exactly the same. Yeah. And you cleaned that, not at the end, and you flipped it like that, and one went through the other, like a trace. Yeah. Tied a knot both ends, and that was fried. And that was called chitterlings.
Oh, Adge Cutler used to sing a song about chitterlings. Yeah.
Who?
Adge Cutler.
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, I'd eat that, but I wasn't keen on that.
No.
And the bladder of the pig, you must hear the lot, I suppose, they were doing it. The bladder of the pig was emptied, and a length of straw was put in the pipe. It was washed out, the bladder was washed out, length of straw put in, and blown up like a balloon. Right. And then tied up to a beam for about 4 or 5 days till it dried. Yeah. And then the boys would come down from Roxy and whatever and play football. Sometimes they'd kick it and kick it and kick it, and it would go on, lovely and last a few days. Another time it come and one kick it would burst, and that was the end of it. Yeah. Nearly as good as Plymouth Argyle. I mean, that was their football.
Yeah. So there we go. I think I'll finish it there for this week, and then we'll have our final part of my interview with Win next week. So I was thinking, for me, dialect of the week, I don't know if it is really dialect, but it is a saying that I've heard people say for quite a few years now. And how would I explain it? If you would be talking to somebody and say somebody had died their age, it would be an indication that they were getting older, and they'd say to you, God, I'm picking out of our pen now. And I take it what it means is the old market days where perhaps you would have a few animals there in a pen, and somebody would come and pick one of the animals out, perhaps to go to the abattoir or something. And over the years, as people are getting older, they begin to realise, and they say, God, I'm picking out of our pen now. And sadly, I know how they feel, because we have conducted a few funerals in the past few months of people my age. But there was another follow-on from that. One of our bearers said his father always said to him, if you're in the pen, mate, don't stand near the edge, stand in the centre, which I thought was quite funny, quite good advice too. But there we are. So that's me saying for the week anyway, then picking out a hairpin now. And for my Cornish word of the week, I think I will have the Cornish for pig, as the dear old chap did take up a lot of the podcast. But this is a booty to pronounce. I don't know if I'll get it right first time. It is hoch. Hoch. So there we go. That's as close as I can get to it. Tis a funny one. I'll have to keep practicing that one. But there we go. So that rounds off this week's podcast. As I say, it is Sunday afternoon and it's all finished unless something drastic happens in the week that I feel I need to adjust it a bit. But if not, I hope you have a good week and I wish you well. Do Guinness. Cernobus Ficken.